gentlemen, we thank you very much for being here tonight. We do still have the director of WCWC, which is the White Creek Wellness Center, and the person of Mr. Bauer, Leslie Bauer. He came today for a presentation, for a cycle actually, and he will deliver the second health message in regard to foods. And as you can see here, you have all the contacts that you may need. White Creek Wellness Center is a location where we have a lot of patients that are coming and are treated in the best and most respectful manner in terms of cleansing, juice diet, cooking classes, health seminars, hydrotherapy, walking in nature, all kind of things that are necessary. Probably Mr. Bauer will give us more enlightenment into that. And I think that the place is beautiful for those who would like to recover their health. And tonight he will have the meal that can kill, part 1. And following that, tomorrow evening he will continue his subject, having a almost 45 minutes open forum tomorrow evening as well. So if you have friends, invite them. If you have some people that have some sickness or problems with their health, they are more than welcome here. We offer all our assistance with no charge. We just wish the best to the people around, and we believe in the best sound mind and healthy body. Mr. Bauer.
Well, thank you for coming this afternoon. And I'm going to share with you more of a dry subject this afternoon, but looking at some of the additives that they put in food and how they might affect us. This morning we looked at how the relationship between food and the mind is affected, and how it affects our mind and our character and the way we act, how we interact with each other. And I want to start by telling you a story. I was working construction in California in the early 1980s, and gentleman that the contractor that was staying with us, he was getting the newspaper each day, so I was reading the newspaper, and there was an article in that paper about an accident that happened at a Dow chemical plant there in California. And one of the large tanks that they produced the chemicals in was timed to be cleaned, and they had emptied the chemicals out, they had washed it out. Now it was time for someone to go out and physically scrub the tank out. And the worker went down to scrub it out, and he collapsed. Has about 6 inches of water in the bottom, so the foreman jumped down in the tank to get him out, and he collapsed. So they hooked up some rigging and pulled him out, and the first man that went down, all of his internal organs decomposed in 24 hours, and he died. The second man took a week because he was only in there a short time, but the same thing, all of his internal organs decomposed, and then he died. That's a chemical that's sprayed on all tropical fruit that's brought into the United States. It was diluted something like 2 million to 1. So we're dealing with powerful chemicals that can infect us powerfully. Now I remember in the article the interviewer was saying, well, what about us? What about when we eat it? And they said, well, you would never get it to that concentration, But what about what's sprayed on papayas and mangoes and then the pears and then the apples and then whatever's put in the meat and all? What about the accumulation of all those chemicals? How does the body handle that? Well, not too well. Not too well. So, let's see. Do I need to turn this on somehow? I have to do what?
You plug it in.
Oh, plug it in. Okay, here it is. All right. So, as there was a science teacher, and he is noted for his Twinkie. He's not noted for anything else but his Twinkie. And his Twinkie is 30 years old. And he is a science teacher from Maine. His name is Roger Benatti. He developed a reputation as an innovative teacher during his 31-year career at George Stevens Academy, using new methods to introduce students to subjects he loved, but the legend of the Twinkie looms over all. So the Twinkie. Speckled with bits of mold, the bright yellow cake still adorns his lab, but Benetti only vaguely remembers why he kept the Twinkie so long. He said, "We wanted to see what the shelf life of a Twinkie was," said Benetti. "The idea was to see how long it would take to go bad." The Twinkie stayed on top of the board through his career, joined in later years by Fig Newton, and occasionally inspired new food experiments. Benetti estimates that the ever-yellow Twinkie is about 30 years old. It's rather brittle, but if you dust it off, it's probably still edible. Benetti said, "It never spoiled." So, this Twinkie has, it seems like, an indefinite shelf life. So, what would your body do with that Twinkie? We are designed to consume organic material that can be broken down and processed. But this Twinkie seems not to be able to be processed. It stayed yellow and it got a little dry and crispy, but never spoiled. And there was the Fig Newton. They got smarter on the Fig Newton. They took a magic marker and put a date on the top of it to see to what at the time that they put it up. Now they take them out of their packages, just put them up on the shelf. So the Fig Newton was, however, dated with a magic marker on it, so we know the Fig Newton is now 15 years old. I would suggest that these foods are not digestible or usable in the body. So preservatives. So have you ever thought about the effects of food additives and preservatives like sodium nitrate, BHA, BHT, propylgalate, monosodium glutamate, MSG, trans fat, aspartame, the acyl, food colorings, olestra, potassium bromate, white sugar, sodium chloride. These are all added to foods. So what kind of foods? Processed foods, right? I mean, they're not adding them just to an apple. These are processed foods. So whenever you're looking at a food that has been canned or processed in some way or made into something, there's going to be a lot of additives in those foods so that the oils in them don't go bad and rancid, so that mold doesn't take them over, so that the taste is stayed, the color is stayed. You know, when I began doing lectures, which was about 27 years ago, occasionally we would find someone that had some allergies. You could find there was a few people we found that were actually environmentally sick. They were allergic to the environment. So almost anything, the air, everything. Some of them had to live in a bubble. They had to have purified environment. So, but what about now? When if I ask a crowd if you'd raise your hand if you are allergic to some food, or if you know someone that is allergic to someone or some food, and have you raise a hand, I don't get. I always get a lot of people now. Before, occasionally. But does anyone here, do you know someone that's allergic to some food? Or you do, yeah, you do. So as you can see, what has happened is we have become inundated with these foreign substances, and our body does not know what to do with them. It's confused. If it's a foreign substance, then our body doesn't know how to handle it. Obesity, one of the problems with obesity is that since the body doesn't know how to deal or break down these compounds, then it needs to store them. And where these foods are stored is in fat. So the more we are exposed, the more difficult it becomes for us to lose weight because these toxins are stored there in the fats. So in the United States, there's a priority-based assessment of food additives. It's done by the FDA. It's a list of foods that are added directly, or additives that are directly added to food. So the PAFA contains administrative, chemical, and toxicological information on over 2,000 substances directly added to food, including substances regulated by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. The FDA has a direct, secondary, direct, and color additives, and generally recognized as safe and prior sanctioned substances. In addition, the database contains only administrative and chemical information on less than 1,000 such substances. So total, the more than 3,000 total substances together comprise an inventory, often referred to as everything that is added to food in the United States. So there is a possibility of about 3,000 substances could be added in your foods. Now the problem with labeling is that you don't always recognize, you can't recognize what's on a label as it doesn't list it directly. They're allowed to use things like natural food coloring or substances in that way, and so they don't have to list the actual chemicals or things used. So allergies. Already food that has no additives at all is preferred, and especially if it is to be used to feed children. Far too many of our young are sensitized through these additives, and this can lead to allergies and such conditions as attention deficit disorder and hyperactivity. So since I was coming to Canada, I went and looked to see about allergies. It says in Canada, 1.52% of children are allergic to peanuts based on the history of allergic reactions. The comparable figure in the U.S. from a 2002 survey is 0.83%, representing an 83% higher rate in Canada. Similar, the rate for tree nut allergies is about 120% higher for Canadian children. 1.13% have a history of reaction here compared to 0.51% in the United States. So I'm not sure why, but it seems like that there is a lot more allergies in Canada. I know that I guess about at least the last 3 times I've been in an airplane, they announced there was somebody allergic to peanuts on the plane, and so allergic that if you opened a package anywhere in the plane, they would get a reaction, so they asked everybody to refrain from eating peanuts. So as it goes on, it says, Clark cautioned, however, that the difference come with a few caveats. The Canadian data was collected 6 years after the U.S. data, and some of the difference could be attributed to an increase in food allergies over that time. I don't know if you get what it's saying here, but what it's saying is that since there was a 6-year difference in when the studies were done, that could have contributed to that 120% increase. So, and that's what the researchers are saying. So that tells me that allergic or allergy reactions to food are increasing at an alarming rate. So dangerous and threatening additives include the colorings, preservatives, flavors, flavoring enhancers, sweeteners, texture agents, processing agents. As you can see, the list is long. Details of this must be included on the labeling and can be identified with little knowledge and some attention to information provided by the manufacturer. The problem is there's very few of us read the labels. You know, I was with a group of people this afternoon and we were eating, and I asked for the package of some of the food that was served, and someone say, well, you know, I didn't look at it, I didn't read the label, you know. But Dad, we have to read the label. You know, if you're concerned about your health or you're concerned about your children's health, you better start reading the label. Because even if it says good or if you bought it at the health food store, does not mean it is. Some of the substances that are in the health food store are as bad as any place else. There's not a lot of regulation on this, especially on labeling. Again, you can hide a lot of products on labeling. We're going to talk a little bit about fats, but not too much. But in the United States in 2008, they passed a law regulating that companies must list the trans fatty acid content of the food. And I will show you the regulation for it. But so a lot of companies have done different things. Now they're making different fats. They're making interesterified fats. They're making fats that I think are probably worse than trans fats. But it'll take 30-some years before there are any regulations on it. It'll wait till whatever the response of the population is to it before there will be any regulation on it. So sodium nitrate or sodium nitrite, this is a preservative coloring and flavoring commonly added to bacon, ham, hot dogs, luncheon meats, smoked fish, and corned beef. Studies have linked eating it to various types of cancer. There are two reasons for adding these chemicals to processed meats. They preserve the color of the meat, meaning that it looks pink like Spam rather than gray like cooked hamburger. You have probably noticed that nearly all meats that contain sodium nitrate or sodium nitrite remain pink or red even though they are cooked during processing. So these chemicals inhibit botulism to some degree. And botulism is a deadly paralytic illness that can lead to respiratory failure. The botulism bacteria is a peculiar bug because unlike most microbes, it actually requires an oxygen-free environment to live. Once it hits the air, it dies. So it tends to appear in canned foods, vacuum-packed foods, garlic stored in oil, and improperly cured meats. So BHA and BHT, butylated hydroxy and butylated hydroxyethylene, are used to preserve common household foods. They are found in cereals, chewing gum, potato chips, vegetable oils. They are oxidants, which form potentially cancer-causing reactive compounds in your body. Again, all of these things, since they're unnatural, have to be processed through the liver. One of the things we've been having to do with most of the people that come to White Creek Wellness Center is give them liver cleanses because their liver is just so worn out, so tired, and plugged with the fats and things they've been eating. It can't process these chemicals anymore. So, see, did I finish that? Cereals, chewing gum, potato chips, vegetables. So what foods contain BHA and BHT? BHA is generally used to keep fats from becoming rancid. So any processed food that has fat in it. And fat is oil from vegetables or fat from animal. It is also used as a yeast deforming agent BHA is found in butter, meat, cereal, chewing gum, baked goods, snack foods, dehydrated potatoes, and beer. It is also found in animal feed, food packaging, cosmetics, rubber products, petroleum products. BHT also prevents oxidation rancidity of fats. It is used to preserve food color and flavoring, odor and flavoring. Many packaging materials incorporate BHT. It's also added directly to shortening, cereals, and other foods that contain fats and oils. So what you have to understand is they will take one substance, for instance, let's say they add BHT to cereal. Well, they will then figure out how much BHT is in that cereal. Then they will figure out how often you might eat that cereal and how much of it, and then they'll determine whether that's safe. But they don't add the accumulated, what if the other cereals you eat on the other days has BHT in it, and the packagings of these other things, and the chewing gum you might in between. And this is where we're running into problems. So propyl gallate and other preservatives often used in conjunction with BHA and BHT. It is sometimes found in meat products, chicken, soup base, and chewing gum. Animal studies have suggested that it could be linked to cancer. The artificial food additive found in meat products, microwavable popcorn, soup mixes, chewing gum, mayonnaise, frozen meals. It has antioxidant properties, which means it helps stop oxygen molecules from mixing with the oil in the food, causing the food to go rancid, which if you were to eat rancid food, it would be very bitter and very unappetizing. In addition to being a possible carcinogen, which is cancer-causing, it may cause the stomach and skin irritability, as well as allergic reactions that impact breathing, so asthma, those type of things. It may also cause kidney and liver problems, although the FDA considers propyl gallate safe. In other countries, it's either banned or in very limited use. So monosodium glutamate, MSG, it has a common name. It's called the Chinese restaurant syndrome. Because generally Chinese food has a lot of monosodium glutamate in it. It's a flavor enhancer. And it's used in soup, salad dressing, chips, frozen food, restaurant food, in soy sauce that's put on Chinese rice and so forth. And very common is the headache that people get after eating Chinese food. So one of the most frequent adverse reactions reported by MSG sufferers is headache in those sensitive to monosodium glutamate. Food that contains MSG can cause abnormal heart rhythms and heart palpitations. Nausea, vomiting can occur. Can go under other names on ingredient labels such as yeast extract and hydrolyzed vegetable protein. And excessive sweating and flushing are commonly reported by sufferers. So, again, just these things we need to avoid. So trans fats, here's what I was talking about earlier. Trans fats are proven to cause heart disease. Restaurant food, especially fast food chains, often serve foods laden with trans fats. What trans fats are, they're a product that is produced when you make hydrogenated oil. So partially hydrogenated or hydrogenated oil produces trans fats. It's a byproduct of that. And again, in 2008, it was required all food material has to label the amount of trans fats in it. What trans fats do is you have two types of cholesterol in your system. One has a label as good and one bad, but those are misnomers. The bad is LDL cholesterol, your low density lipids. And HDL is your good cholesterol. The higher your HDL, the less chance you have of a heart attack. The lower it is, the greater your risk, even if your total cholesterol is high. So what trans fats do is they force the LDL to go low, or your HDL to go low and your LDL to go up. They force the very bad condition. One of the major studies done on trans fats was Dr. Willett, who went and studied in the United States the outbreak of heart disease, which started in the 1930s, 1940s. And that's when the production of partially hydrogenated foods was started. That's when margarine was introduced in the United States. And that became the outbreak of heart disease. So according to a 2006 study from the Center of Science and Public Interest, a typical 3-piece combo meal at Kentucky Fried Chicken contains a whopping 15 grams of trans fat. That's a lot of trans fat. Here's a large study done. It was 66,000 nurses. Women who eat 4 or more teaspoons of margarine a day had a 66% greater risk of heart disease than women who have margarine less than once a month, all due to the trans fats. Here is the U.S. Federal regulation. It says if the serving contains less than 0.5 grams of trans fat, the content when declared shall be expressed as 0. So I've mentioned to several of you here that I don't trust labeling. So in the United States now, if you pick up a package of chips, it'll have right on the top a big, it'll say 0 trans fats, right? Does that mean it has 0 trans fats in it? Well, let's say that company, let's call them Frito-Lay. Frito-Lay, we'll just use it as a generic term here. Let's say before the law came out that its serving was 30 chips, all right? And it had 1 gram of trans fats in 30 chips. So what could they do to be able to meet the regulation and not have to change their product? Change the serving size to 15. Then they would have a 0.5 gram for a serving size, and they could put a big label on the top, 0 trans fats. So the regulation doesn't address the serving size, it just addresses how much in a serving. So here's an interesting study done with athletes, a group of young men athletes. What they did is they took their normal diet and the amount of fat they normally ate, and they reduced their fat intake and substituted walnuts, English walnuts, equal to the amount of fat that they reduced. So they were eating a 1/2 cup of walnuts a day for 4 weeks. And their average LDL, their bad cholesterol, was reduced by 18 points. And all they did in their diet was substitute walnuts for their other fats. And why walnuts? Walnuts have what we call omega-3. It is a unsaturated fat, an essential fatty acid, and omega-3 is noted for cleaning your blood vessels. And so the walnuts have what they call the best PS ratio, which is 4 monounsaturated fat to 1 polyunsaturated, or anything better than that. So, for instance, flaxseed is a 1-to-4 ratio. It has the most omega-3 fatty acids in it. And so if you have a problem with your arteries and maybe your blood pressure, then you should be using some products like walnuts or flaxseed to get more of your omega-3, and it will start cleaning your blood vessels very quickly. So, aspartame. Aspartame, also known by the brand names of NutraSweet and Equal. is a sweetener found in so-called diet foods, such as low-calorie desserts, gelatins, drink mixes, and soft drinks. It may cause cancer or neurological problems, such as dizziness and hallucinations. Acesulfame K is a relatively new artificial sweetener found in baked goods, chewing gum, there's the chewing gum again, and gelatin desserts. There is a general concern that testing on this product has been scant, and some studies show that the additive may cause cancer in rats. So, this acesulfame K, the problems surrounding this product are based on the improper testing and lack of long-term studies. The carcinogen methylene chloride, long-term exposure to methylene chloride can cause headaches, depression, nausea, mental confusion, liver effects, kidney effects, visual disturbances, and cancer in humans. So if you consider what we talked about this morning as the things in our diet and how it affects our thinking and our interaction with each other, when you're throwing all of these artificial substances in there that are, again, our body cannot handle, doesn't know what to do with, a lot of them are going to affect your brain. They're going to pass through your system. The body does not know how to filter them out. A lot of these chemicals, some of them lodge in organs, some of them lodge in the brain. You can't get hallucinations without chemicals going into the brain. So, neotame. It's in 2002, the FDA approved a new version of aspartame called neotame. Neotame is chemically related to aspartame without the phenylamine, euthane. Dangers for individuals with PKU is that it's much sweeter than aspartame. It's got a potency about 7,000 to 13,000 times sweeter than sugar. I pause for the effect. 7,000 to 13 times sweeter than sugar. Sugar is bad enough on our bodies, but then when you make an artificial sweetener that's 7,000 to 13,000 times sweeter, it gets real confusing. So one of the most disturbing claims against artificial sweeteners, and where do they put them, artificial sweeteners? In diet products. Diet soda and these diet products and these gums that say no sugar in them and these type of things. As against these artificial sweeteners is that they can cause weight gain. The majority of the people who use these products often do so in order to save calories or to lose or maintain weight. We are told that this is why we need to consume them, and it would be upsetting to find out that they have actually been a part of the problem and not the solution. The research that shows weight gain and artificial sweeteners consumption has been around since the 1970s. The Nurses' Health Study in 1970 found weight gain over 8 years in 31,904 women using saccharin. In the early 80s, the American Cancer Society studied 78,694 women, found that after 1 year, 2.7 to 7.1% more regular artificial sweetener users gained weight compared to non-users. The San Antonio Heart Study found that 3,682 adults over 8 years on the early 80s, those who consumed more artificial sweeteners had higher BMIs, body mass index, and the more they consumed, the higher their body mass index. So the theory is that our body senses the sweetness of the food and expects the calories. When we consume artificial sweeteners without the calories, your body continues to crave the calories. So you end up eating more calories later on. In rat studies, rat-fed diets with artificial sweeteners ate more calories all day than those fed meals with sugar. There are many also be a connection with the complex food reward pathway that drives our desires to eat. The sweeteners without the calories interferes with the normal process of this pathway, causing increased craving for sweets. See, in our bodies, as soon as we start eating, our body starts counting calories. And our stomach has sensors in them. Those sensors determine the calorie density of a food, and they determine the bulk of the food. This is something they call satiety or satiety. So when you're eating, there's a natural feeling that will tell you to stop eating so that you don't overeat. And when you start making these artificial substances, they bypass all of our safety mechanisms and cause a great confusion in our mind. Our mind thinks that, well, with all of this sweetness we're getting, we should be getting more calories, so we get this desire to eat more. Cholesterol, it's a synthetic fat found in some potato chip brands, can cause severe diarrhea, abnormal cramps, and gas. Cholesterol also inhibits healthy vitamin absorption from fat-soluble carotenoids that are found in fruits and vegetables. Potassium bromate. Potassium bromate is used as an additive to increase volume in some white flour breads and rolls. It is known to cause cancer in animals, and even small amounts in bread can create a risk in humans. So let's look at sugar a little bit. And sugar is one of the, if you look at all these things, to me, I avoid all sugar. So if I avoid all sugar, I'm going to avoid all these other additives because most of them are worse than sugar. So let's look at sugar a little bit. If you don't eat any sugar at all, your white T cell has an ability to kill 14 bacteria. But then if you eat 6 teaspoons of sugar, that white T cell can only kill 10 bacteria before it dies. If you eat 12 teaspoons, it can kill 5.5. If you eat 18 teaspoons, it can kill 2. If you eat 24 teaspoons, which is easily consumed today with pops and those type of things, it'll only kill 1 bacteria before it dies. And you get sick. Because if your immune system is down to the point where your T cells can only kill 1 bacteria at a time before they die, bacteria multiply very quickly in the body. So this is why sometimes you can sit next to somebody and they got a cold and you don't get sick. But then again, you sit next to somebody and within an hour your nose is running and you can feel it coming on. It's because your immune system was down and couldn't handle the defense. So if you're doing this regularly, then you're creating an environment and then you're consuming these additives that cause cancer. What is cancer? Cancer is a cell of the body that's no longer regulated by the body. Okay, it's a rebellious cell, and that rebellious cell in a normal healthy body, a healthy immune system, will be recognized very quickly, attacked, and destroyed. But if your immune system is down, then you're taking in all of these artificial additives. These additives have a tendency to deform these cells and cause them to become cancerous. And so you're creating a lot of cancerous cells, and your immune system's too low to be able to kill all these things. So you're creating an environment for disease. Here are some of the cancers related to consumption of sugar: colon cancer, rectal cancer, breast cancer, ovarian cancer, uterine cancer, prostate cancer, kidney cancer, and cancer of the nervous system, which is like Hodgkin's disease. Here is some hidden sugars. A malted milk is 12 ounces, about 42 teaspoons. Soft drinks, 12 ounces, 10 to 12, up to 16. Canned fruits, 1 serving 8. Chocolate cake, a 4-ounce slice is 8 teaspoons. Chocolate candy, 1 ounce is 7 teaspoons. Fruit pie, ice cream, donut glaze, jam, and jelly, so on and so forth. So we can get a lot of sugar very quickly. I saw some ketchup this afternoon. We'll talk about ketchup here in a minute. Americans consume about 547 sodas a year for every man, woman, and child in the United States. So there's an average of about 16 teaspoons in these sodas. So here we go. Cocoa Mix is 82% sugar. Coffee Mate is 65% sugar. Shake and Bake Barbecue Style is 51% sugar. Heinz Ketchup is 30% sugar. So 30% sugar in Heinz Ketchup, that's the standard formula for ketchup, no matter if it says natural on it or natural sugars. It's 1/3 sugar. So a serving size is a tablespoon. 1 teaspoon of that tablespoon is sugar. So Hamburger Helper, 23%, Cool Whip, 21%, chocolate cake, 15 teaspoons. Cup of frozen yogurts, 12 teaspoons of sugar. So how about Jell-O? It's 83% sugar. So if you ate 6 teaspoons of sugar, that will lower your white blood cells' ability to fight pathogens by 25%. You eat 24 teaspoons, it's lowered its ability to fight disease by 92%. That's equivalent to 1 piece of pie and a soda. And that's somewhere around up to 6 hours after you've eaten it. Yep, having a little problem here. Let me back up. See if I can get it.
About 1 out of every 20 people. If the diabetes starts before the age of 15, you lose somewhere between 17 and 27 years of lifespan. According to the new research, the direct medical costs associated with diabetes have doubled. The direct medical costs have doubled in the past 5 years, from $44 billion in 1997 to $92 billion in 2002. And somewhere in the neighborhood of about 20% of the obese children have elevated abnormal liver function tests. And we have now started a study where we're biopsying these children to see what their livers actually look like under the microscope. And half of them have evidence of scarring of the liver, fibrosis of the liver, the early stages of cirrhosis. So when these children end up being adults, they're going to end up, if they don't change their eating and exercise habits, are going to end up with liver failure and either transplant or death.
So this is new in history. Up until recently, we only thought that someone that would get cirrhosis of the liver, which is hardening of the liver, are alcoholics. But these children, teenage children, are getting up to 20% of them have early stages of cirrhosis of the liver. They got fibrosis of the liver. Are they drinking? No. What are they eating? Fried foods and sugar foods. And high-fat foods are as hard on the liver and pancreas as sugar is, and you combine the two, and we're creating little alcoholics. So these children that, did you get the statistics as if they start getting diabetes before the age of 15, what was the lifespan, shortened lifespan?
Between 17 and 27.
Between 17 and 27 years. So it really, we should be very cautious about what we eat. Now that was just talking about fat and sugar. Now you combine that with all of these other additives, and we are really creating stages for degeneration of the human body. So sugar. Dr. Edgar Howe says sugar is the greatest scourge that has ever been visited upon man in the name of food. I believe it should be outlawed as a poison. And you can't look at sugar as food. Sugar is not a food. Sugar is a chemical. You cannot put food directly in the bloodstream. You can put white sugar directly in the bloodstream because it is just sucrose or dextrose. It's just a chemical. It is not a food. It does not need to go through the digestive process. It could be mixed with water, put directly in the bloodstream. You can't do that with honey. You can't do that with anything that is a food substance. That will kill you. But you can put this. It's a chemical. It's not a food. And it's very powerful on the body. So in 1822, Americans ate 2 teaspoons of sugar a day. 1870, they ate 11 teaspoons a day. In 1902, they ate 22 teaspoons a day. In 1980, 35 teaspoons a day. And today, average American for every man, woman, and child eats 46 teaspoons a day. That is 147 pounds a year for every man, woman, and child in the USA. So 46 teaspoons a day. What ability does their immune system have for defending disease? 0. None. And that's average. That's the average for every man, woman, child in the United States. So we're taking 330 million people with an average of eating this, and I eat none, so someone out there is cheating. They're eating more than me. All right, that is it for today.